Welcome to another video session by In This Gurukul. Children, today's topic is fundamental rights. Let's understand what fundamental rights are. As you can see very clearly, it mentions the right to protect citizen against the arbitrary and absolute exercise of power by the state. The Constitution thus guarantees the rights of individuals against the state as well as another individual. Now, these rights are protected under the Charter of Rights contained in the Part 3 of the Constitution of India, merely spread up in between the Articles 12 to 35. Let's know and get to know all the different types of the rights that we hold. The right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies. These 6 rights have been expansively written under the various articles. Article 14 to 18 holds up in detail mentions about right to equality, whereas right to freedom is been detailed up in Article 19 to Article 22. Right against exploitation comes under Article 23 to 24, whereas right to freedom of religion falls under Article 25 to 28, followed by cultural and educational rights further in Article 29 and 30. The rights to constitutional remedy is being detailed up in Article 32 to 35. Let's understand all 6 of them in a pictorial diagram over here. When we refer to right to equality, we are talking that all the persons are equal before the law. This means that all persons shall be equally protected by the laws of the country. It says that no citizen can be discriminated against on the basis of their religion, caste or sex. And every person has an access to all the public places, including playgrounds, hotels, shops, etc. You can very well see this in this picture. In a park, a lady is trying to accept the person who looks dark sitting beside her. Whereas this has been questioned by another lady who has been walking on the road by saying that she shouldn't have let him sit as he's from Africa. That means based on the color, he should have been discriminated. So this right of equality renders the right to every citizen to hold the equality of any access to the public places and to play in the playgrounds, hotels, shops or stay with any person, and the state cannot discriminate against anyone in the matters of employment as well. Right to freedom, another freedom of right a person holds up where he is free. It includes the right to freedom of speech and expression, the right to form associations, the right to move freely and reside in any part of the country. As you can see in this pictorial diagram, this person is being thrown out from a country and he looks for shelter in another. The right to freedom, availing the right to freedom, he can do that, whereas if he wouldn't have been given this right, there would have been discrimination and he would have been sent to asylum or jail. Right against exploitation is another kind where the Constitution prohibits human trafficking, forced labor and employment of children under the age of 14. This pictorial diagram is a special case of child labor. As you can see, the child over here is definitely under the age of 14. Right to religion, exercising and providing all the citizens the right to exercise their own chosen religion. Each person has a right to practice, profess and propagate the religion of their own choice. Whereas the cultural and educational right, it holds that all the minorities, religious or linguistics, can set up their own educational institution in order to preserve and develop their own culture. So anything, any school of different culture can be opened in any other state irrespective of where they belong from and what the state culture is. And the last, the right to constitutional remedies, it holds that every citizen is allowed to move to even the court if they believe that any of their fundamental rights have been violated by the state as well. Let's assimilate all this knowledge regarding the 6 fundamental rights and try to understand in these set of cases. We have 4 cases over here. We need to just mention under which violation of which right is being stated here. In a 13-year-old child working in a factory manufacturing carpets, which right is violated? Yes, it is a right against exploitation, specifically which comes under child labor. As below 14 years, a child cannot be made to work. If a politician from one state decides not to allow laborers from the other state to work in a state, in this case, the right to freedom has been violated. As the right to freedom simply mentions that it has the freedom of expression, freedom to move freely and reside in any part of the country. If a group of people are not given permission to open any different language, like open a Telugu medium school in Kerala in this sentence, this comes under the violation of cultural and educational rights. Whereas if the government decides not to promote an officer of the armed forces because she is a woman, this comes under the right of equality. So, yes, understand this very clearly that we have just done in the previous slide. Right against exploitation, first sentence, this violating right to freedom, educational medium not being opened in another state is a violation of cultural and educational right, whereas a woman being discriminated against a man would be a violation of right to equality. Let's understand these 6 rights in detail, starting from the right to equality. The right to equality, as the name sounds, it includes the equality of any individual before the law, prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, gender, or place of birth, and equality of opportunity given in every matters, be it employment, abolition of untouchability, and abolition of titles as well. All these rights have been mentioned in between Article 14, Article 15, Article 16, Article 17 and 18. We must have come across a live movie which named as Article 15, starred by Ayushmann Khurrana, where this article has been explained in detail, where there was a discrimination made against 3 children of a different class or a religious background. The same article is being explained, and that was a right to equality which majorly people staying in the country or state may not be aware of. So as a matter of fact, all the rights should be known by an individual of the country so as they can exercise their right for everything and they can avail those rights. Right to freedom. The right to freedom, it includes the freedom of speech, expression, of movement, or in any part of the country, and to practice any kind of profession or occupation or business. This has been spread up in detail from Article 19 to Article 22. Specifically, in Article 19, the protection of certain rights regarding freedom of speech. The right to freedom includes freedom of speech, expression, assembly, association or union or cooperatives, movement, residence, right to practice any profession or occupation. Detailed up in Article 20 is about the respect of conviction for offences, whereas Article 21 talks about the protection of life and personal liberty. Article 22, on the other hand, talks about the protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. Next follows is the right against exploitation. There are various rights against exploitation, be it human trafficking, forced labor, and employment of children under 14 years of age. The right against exploitation prohibits all forms of these. This has been spread up in detail in Article 23 and 24, which deals prohibition of human trafficking and forced labor in Article 23, whereas Article 24 specifically talks about the prohibition of employment of children in factories or any working place. Right to freedom of religion. As we understood earlier, the right of freedom of religion, it includes the freedom of conscience, free possession, free practice, free profession, propagation of religion, freedom to manage religious affairs, freedom from certain taxes, and freedom from religious instructions in certain educational institutes. Spread up in Article 25 to Article 28, this has been read in detail. In every article, like in 25, freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion has been detailed up, whereas in the next 26, it's about freedom to manage religious affairs. Freedom as to payment of taxes for promotion for any particular religion is been mentioned in Article 27, followed by the freedom as to attendance at religious instructions or religious worships in certain educational institutions have been detailed up in Article 28. Next is cultural and educational rights. This right preserves the right of any section of citizen to conserve their culture, language or script, and the right of minorities specifically to establish and administer educational institutions of their own choice. Spread up in Article 29 to Article 31C. Protection of interest of minorities, been detailed in Article 29. Right of minorities to establish and administer educational institutions in Article 30. 31A talks about the savings of laws providing for acquisitions of estates, etc. Validation of certain acts and regulation being detailed up in 31B. 31C in detail talks about the saving of laws giving effect to certain directive principles. Right to constitutional remedies is another very important right which is being provided to all the individuals of the country, where an individual has the right, it allows the citizens to move to even the court if they believe that any of their fundamental rights have been violated by the state. The right to privacy is an intrinsic part of Article 21, the right to freedom. This protects the life and liberty of the citizens. Article 32 to Article 35 covers this right in detail. Remedies for enforcement of rights conferred by this part is detailed up in Article 32. Next, in Article 33, it's followed by the power of Parliament to modify the rights conferred by this part in their application to forces, etc. Restriction on rights conferred by this part while martial law is in force in any area is mentioned in Article 34. Whereas Article 35 talks about legislation to give effect to the provisions of this part. Hence, we've got to understand all the 6 rights, fundamental rights in detail. So this is the end of the session. Thank you. For any confusions and queries, you can text up in this WhatsApp number mentioned over here. Thank you.